Well, it's very simple. Over the last year, I've been doing a whole series of financial wellbeing talks and workshops all around the country for groups of employees for large companies. And obviously, drawing on my original experience as a financial planner for 25 years, together with the deep research I did for that, I suddenly realised actually the attendees needed something after I'd finished, almost like a sort of a manual, if you will, or a guide to help them continue along the path that I'd sort of explained to them. And also, I wanted to get as many people as possible to understand the principles that I was teaching people, because there's only so many people I can actually teach all around the country. There's only so many hours in the day. So this is a way of actually reaching as many people as possible to give them a framework to make much better decisions about money. Well, you're right, there are lots of books out there about personal finance, but for most of them are turgid, they're boring, they're very, very difficult to engage with. Most people, what they needed was a series of stories based around a series of steps that they could actually implement immediately in their daily lives to have less worry and anxiety with money and have more happiness and fulfillment out of their life. The response I've had to the book so far has been absolutely amazing. I've been overwhelmed, in fact. I had readers who've said, I've got to chapter 4 and immediately decided to order copies for all of my adult children. I've had financial advisors who've read the book and said, I want all of my clients to have a copy of this for Christmas or for their birthday. I've been approached by colleges and universities and said, could you come and give us a lecture and bring a load of books, because we think this will help motivate our students to be better with their money, regardless of the career that they follow. So I've been overwhelmed. But like everything, my aim and my ambition is to get a copy of this book into every hand of every person under the age of 35. But it certainly can help anyone over 35. Well, my aim with this book is to help people have a better relationship with money, to make sure that money doesn't cause them worry and stress, and that they have more happiness and fulfillment in their life by using money in a way that's in tune with their values. And we do that through telling people simple stories that help them understand a concept that they can implement in their life now. To my mind, there are 5 components to financial well-being. One is how you think and feel about money, your money mind. The other is getting control of your day-to-day finances. The other is being able to cope with a financial shock. The other is having choices so that you can actually enjoy life now and do the right things with your money that help you have a fulfilled life. And the other is to be on track to meet your longer-term goals and other objectives that you're trying to achieve. Well, the last chapter of the book is what I call where you've got to walk the talk. You actually got to put stuff into action. And so what I've done is I've summarised 20 key things that you should think about doing to make yourself have better financial well-being. And it's really just a simple mixture of things, whether it's attitudes, thoughts, feelings, habits, actions that you need to take. And it's available now as a free download from my website, so that anyone, even if you can't afford the book or you don't want to buy it, you can at least look at the cheat sheet, or the checklist as I call it, and see how you're doing compared to the things that I say you should be doing. The first component of money mind is how you think and feel about money. And that can be both negative and positive. So the negatives are having, for instance, self-limiting beliefs. I'm no good with money, I was no good at maths, I can't seem to control my finances, money goes through my fingers. It's the negative that you've learned, a story, a script that you've learned from your childhood or your early years. Other aspects are basically not using money in a way which is in tune with what's important to you and which is going to be positive to your life and can be actually negative. So it's that psychological construct that we all have, where we've got those voices in our head often influencing us to do things that are not in our best interests. Well, self-limiting beliefs are just stories that we've told ourselves over a period of years that we believe are the truth, but they're not the truth. And these are things that often hold us back. It can be in any aspect of life, but insofar as your financial well-being, what we really mean is things that you tell yourself that hold you back from being good with money. Now, it could be, I was no good at maths at school, I'm no good with numbers, money goes through my fingers like water, I can't seem to understand any of this stuff. It's when you keep telling yourself that and you start believing it, it holds you back. In terms of financial well-being, comparing yourself to other people is an absolute recipe for disaster, unhappiness and failure, because there will always be someone who has more than you. There'll always be someone who earns more than you, who's got more stuff than you, who's going on lovely holidays, who's got a wonderful family, and unfortunately you cannot possibly win that game. And with social media and digital communications, this peer comparison, as we call it, is everywhere. So I would say to you, do not compare your happiness and define your happiness by what other people are doing with the money, because that doesn't matter. Aligning your spending with what's important to you is one of the most important things you can possibly do. Obviously, you need to have enough money coming in, but if then you aren't using that money in a way which is in tune with what you say is important to you, and you're doing things that other people are sort of suggesting are what you should be doing, then you're getting further away from having a true fulfilling life. And very few people actually do stand back and say, what does a good life look like to me? And how am I going to get the most happiness bang for my buck? And it's really, really important to align your spending with what you say is important to you. Because if you start spending money on things that aren't important with you, they get you further away from happiness and fulfillment. And a good example of that is buying a car that you can't really afford because you want to impress people who you don't know, and quite frankly, they don't care. I think the first stage to having a really good relationship with money and a positive relationship with money is to believe that actually you are good with money, you can be good with money, and that you will be good with money. Because self-belief is the number one thing. If you believe it, you will do it. So the first thing is to make that decision in your mind that you are going to be good with money and you are going to get ahead. It's absolutely right that being good with money is not a once and forget thing. It's a daily thing that you have to actually embrace. And the best analogy I can give is eating well and exercising. You don't just eat well one day out of 365. You have to make a decision. There's no such thing as a diet. There is a lifestyle change, and you can make those decisions on a daily basis. Learning to say yes less and no more to certain spending, being more intentional, and actually having a good self-image about yourself, about money, and the role that it plays in your life. It's essential for financial well-being for you to feel in control of your finances. And you do that by taking control of your day-to-day spending and also knowing what you've got and what you owe. And that is a major change for many people. So for instance, one of the most practical things you can do is to not use contactless payment. Because contactless payment, although it's convenient, has been shown to make people do 30% higher level of discretionary and impulse spending than if they part with cash. Because when you part with cash, it's a physical act. And it's something I've taught my children, that until you can learn to actually budget and stay within a budget, you must pay for most things with cash, day-to-day things, coffees and sandwiches and stuff. So you actually think about it a bit more. And this is not about living like a monk. This is just about being intentional and being aware of where your money goes. The other thing is working out where it all does go. Just sitting down and going for your bank statements or looking at one of these apps and just working out if you're spending £1,000 a year on coffees, but you can't save any money in an emergency fund, perhaps you might need to make your own coffee. One of the things that I try and teach people when I do my financial wellbeing courses is that you are the master of your own destiny. No one else. Even if you come from a difficult background or you're earning a low wage, you can and you will improve that. So for instance, rather than investing in investments, you might well invest in yourself to improve your earning potential, to increase your skills. If you lose your job, you haven't lost your ability to actually earn money because you've still got skills, contacts, experience, energy, time. And so I want to hopefully get people to stop thinking like a victim and be a victor. They can and they will take control of their money and they will do better things with it. Getting control of spending is probably one of the key foundations that everyone has to master if they're going to have good financial well-being. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you earn. If you always spend everything you've got coming in or more, then you're never going to get ahead, you're never going to build resilience, and you're never going to have choices. Well, the first step to getting control of your spending is to work out where it all goes and stop putting your head in the sand. It's not fun. It isn't something that we all got a spring in our step doing, because we like spending, don't we? But if you just sat down and looked at your bank statements or looked at an app or worked out on a spreadsheet where the money goes, that's the first stage to first of all work out, am I spending on things that are helping me have a good relationship with money and good financial well-being? Failing to control spending is probably one of the single biggest problems that most people have that affects their financial well-being negatively. And the opposite of that is getting control and exercising proper will over what you are spending your money on. Now, this is not always about going without, but it may be making some subtle changes once you know where it's all going. And most people are in denial about where their money actually is going, and they often think they can't save, or they haven't got enough money to put money aside, or enough money to build up a reserve. And it's because they're just not exercising free will, a bit like someone who's eating everything at the buffet every day and not even thinking it's going to affect their waistline or their health. Give an example of how you can control urges and impulses. I am an absolute avid reader. I read 2 books a week, and I'm always buying stuff off of Amazon. And they used to send me things saying, you bought this, so you probably want this. And I used to say yes, and one click. But now what I do, and I have the urge to buy that book, I just click it and put it on my wish list. So I'm still sort of showing interest, but I'm not buying. And so what I then do at the end of the month, I look at what's on my wish list, and I can only choose 4 books. Now that way, I'm still indulging my passion of reading, but I'm not actually being dictated to by someone else who's trying to sell a product or service and get me when I'm low or when I'm highly engaged with the product. One of the ways that you can get control of your spending is to understand that you are going to have impulses and you are going to have urges. And just accept it. We're human, we're not machines. We don't do everything in an irrational way. And that's because we've got 2 sides of our personality. And we've got the doer who's myopic and wants to spend today, and we've got the planner who's rational. And the thing is, we're having this tussle all the time. And one of the simplest ways is next time you get the urge to spend some money, whether it's online or in a shop, say to yourself, I'm just going to say no for the moment. Now, my view on credit cards is mixed. I think they're a great thing when it comes to buying big purchases online where you want some credit protection or you're concerned about the purchaser. But I think you have to earn the right to use a credit card responsibly. And so for anyone under the age of 35, I would say to you, try and avoid using credit cards unless you absolutely have to use them, for instance, on an online purchase or something where you're concerned about security. But keep the limit very low. And the reason for that is that credit cards encourage you to get yourself into debt, bad debt. And they encourage you to buy things that you wouldn't normally be able to buy. And then you end up spending the rest of your life always paying enormous amounts of interest and never being able to save for your future or for your emergency fund. Yeah, you absolutely must avoid overdrafts and store cards. They are what I call card cancer. They're awful. They're absolutely not designed to help your financial well-being. If you can't afford it, I'm very sorry, but you shouldn't have it. A little bit of denial sometimes might mean, well, actually, can you afford your job? And if at the end of the day, every month you haven't got enough money to buy the extras that you want, then perhaps you need to invest in yourself. And if, for instance, you were going to go and get a loan to help you get a better qualification or more skills to earn more money, that might be acceptable. But to use credit to buy things that you really haven't got the money for, that you don't really need, is a recipe for disaster. Finally. The way that I think you use a credit card responsibly is only ever use it to buy stuff that you've got the money in your account to pay for otherwise. And so therefore, when the bill comes around the next month, you've got the money to pay it back. And don't get lulled into thinking that zero balance transfers or purchases are a good thing, because eventually you either have to pay a fee for arranging those, or you'll end up paying interest when it comes to the end of the period. A cash reserve is so vital to your financial well-being for a number of reasons. Firstly, so that you can afford to meet costs that you weren't anticipating. Let's say your car broke down, or your boiler went wrong, or something happened that you needed to pay up for that you hadn't anticipated. If you haven't got a cash reserve, then you're going to end up getting in debt and overdrafts and credit cards, which we know is bad debt. The other reason is because if you lose your job and therefore your income, whether that's because you got made redundant or because you were ill for a period of time, then, or perhaps you've lost your hours because your firm hasn't got as much work for you, then it's important to have a reserve that you can draw on to sort of supplement your income to meet your expenses as they fall due. And one of the single biggest reasons why people get into debt is because they have had a change in their employment or their income for some means. There's no magic to building a cash reserve. It's pretty straightforward. You have to save money out of your income and put it aside into an account which is accessible. So not a stocks and shares ISA or a pension or any other home. It has to be in an account that you can get your hands on. So it won't have a very high interest rate, but you can get your hands on it. But it's only for emergencies. The second thing is, as a rough rule of thumb, you should look to save between 3 to 12 times your monthly core expenses. So not all the extras, holidays and what have you, but just the core expenses. And you need to save more if you are very reliant on your income and less if you're less reliant. So for instance, your firm may have a special, have to pay you 12 months money if they make you redundant, or you may well have income from a property coming in that won't stop if you stop work. So everyone's different, but it's somewhere between 3 to 12 months expenditure. Your financial well-being is really affected by your ability to cope with a financial shock. And one of the biggest financial shocks is if you can't earn your money because you're ill or you're disabled, or you die and it affects your family. Now, obviously, if you're young and single and you have no dependents, it's not a big issue if you die. But it is a big issue if you have dependents. So what we're talking about there in order of importance are protecting your income in the event that you can't work due to illness or disability. Many employers provide this, but many don't. And if you're self-employed, you will definitely need to get some cover. Then you'll be looking at life assurance, paying out if you die, either a lump sum or in instalments. Then, depending on the health situation where you are, perhaps private health insurance might help you get quicker treatment on some of the less life-threatening illnesses, but nevertheless things that might stop you from working. And then finally, a sort of, if you really nice to have, is critical illness insurance, which pays out if you get diagnosed with one of these terrible critical illnesses or paralysed. But if you're still working and therefore have not achieved financial independence, whether you've got dependents or not, the single most important insurance that you need to effect for you personally is income protection insurance. This means that an insurance company takes over and pays you a proportion of your pre-disability income for as long as you're ill, up to and including your retirement age, which could be 60, 65, or indeed even 70. That is the single most important insurance. So check if your employer's got it. Even if they've got it, is it enough? And if you're self-employed, you definitely need it. It's absolutely right that you can be overinsured. You can be overinsured for lots of things. But here's the sad reality. I was an advisor for 25 years and I found people were more overinsured on their home contents and their mobile phone and all the other rubbish, and they were underinsured on their life, their disability, their income, etc. So I'm yet to see a situation where there's an enormous number of people who are overinsured. The most important thing is to work out what the risk is, because it may be low probability, but it's a very high impact event if you lose your income due to illness or disability. The link between money and happiness, there's been loads and loads of research done on that. And money, obviously you need a certain amount of money to avoid you being in poverty. You know, a certain amount of money, you know, if you've got nothing in your skin, you can be very unhappy. But beyond a certain point, having more and more and more money and more things and more choices doesn't necessarily make you happier. There is a sort of a happy medium, and that will be different for all of us. There'll be a sweet spot, and I think we all instinctively know it, and it's having that choice to choose. It's having the ability to see people and build relationships with people that matter to us and that we care for. It's having life experiences as opposed to having lots more stuff, and it's not worrying about stuff. And if one message I want to get across to people is that it's not so much about getting rich, but it's about avoiding being poor and having choice in life so that you don't have worry, anxiety and stress, and that you look forward to the future with optimism, but that you enjoy life today as well. All of the research tells us that the biggest bang for your buck happiness-wise is to buy experiences and to do those experiences with other people. So for instance, going to a pop concert with your friends is going to get you more happiness than buying the latest iPhone that you tell all your friends about, because bragging is definitely not a good deal. The other thing that you can do is do giving to charity, and giving to charities where you really think about it, not just putting it in the bucket because they jangle it in front of you and you feel sorry for them, but because you think it through and you're trying to help them using altruism to help other people. But here's the point, we're all different. The most important thing you need to do is step back and say, what does make me happy, and am I using my money in a way that helps me get more of that and less of the unhappiness? And so therefore being really intentional about giving your time and money to causes that are important to you, and really thinking it through and doing it on a planned basis is probably better for you than just responding emotively to short-term campaigns or people jangling buckets, which obviously you can contribute to, but they don't actually add a lot to your financial well-being, your general happiness. The final component of financial well-being is being on track to meet your future goals. Now, we're not talking here about still not enjoying yourself now. You must enjoy yourself now, but we need to have an idea, a longer perspective. And so therefore you need to get to know the older you. And it's been shown that if you can have a slightly longer perspective as well as thinking about today, it means that the daily decisions you make are made in the context of how you may be in 5, 10, 15 and 20, 30, 40 years' time. And the reality is most of us are going to live to our 90s or even 100, and those odds are increasing all the time. So one of the ways that you can get to know the older you and make better decisions on a daily basis is to get yourself an aging app. Take a picture of yourself and age yourself and see how you're going to look when you're 90. Because the studies show that if you look at the older you, it actually connects you with the future, and it brings the abstract future you into the present day. And so therefore every day when you make decisions, you can say to yourself, am I being good to the future me? Now, when we talk about being on track to meet your future goals, we're really talking about having some kind of plan, some kind of framework, some kind of context in which our daily decisions are made so that we can be good to our future self. Now, some people think this is a sort of straitjacket and you've got to have really, really strict goals and specific this, that and the other. Well, that's not true. All you need to do is make some guesses. It just needs to be a sort of a rough idea. I think I want to go this way, and I think I might want to stop sort of work by the time I'm 70, or I might want to go part-time by the time I'm 60, or I might want to sell my house. Just make some guesses and just make some rough ideas, because you can always change it. The most important thing is to have a rough idea of the direction that you're going on with your finances.